Whatever we're hearing about, we might not have all the bits of information that we need. This is the week of November 11th, so those following 7 days. Hello, welcome everyone. This is G. This is our regular weekly video that we do just to keep us aware of what's going on up there so that we better understand what's going on right here down here. This is Venus, Mercury, Mars, the Sun. These are our typical movers, the typical movers and shakers on a weekly basis because they're the personal planets. They're small, they're personal, they're private, they move fast. So when they're changing, when they're shaking things up, when they move, they can shake things up because they might move into a new sign. So we'll start off with Venus. Venus is actually going to be doing that this week, and she does it pretty quickly. So here we are on Monday, and we see Venus right there at 29, right? A critical degree. There's Venus, 29 in Sagittarius. Many times we can hear of people who are public figures at 29 degrees. It's like known as the millionaire degree, people who are public figures. It's an extreme degree, though, just like zero is extreme, and usually big events. And it would have to do with desires. So also money and love when we talk about Venus, desires, money, and love. The other thing with Venus, too, is because she's at 29, it means that the previous couple of days was conjunct the galactic center here. And that's a big point in a chart, the galactic center. It usually represents a point of need. Think of it as the galactic Hoover up in the sky. It's like it sucks everything in. It's a black hole technically, right? But anything that gets close enough within the vicinity of it, it's sucking it in. Feminine energy, feminine values, beliefs about feminine values and freedoms and rights and liberties and justice. Sure, that makes sense, doesn't it? Venus and Saggy, right? And the future of my freedoms, Venus and Saggy. Religion, spirituality, and unfortunately, your religious beliefs, how that kind of filters somehow into the government, and now, in my doctor's office, in the conversations between me and my doctor, like my doctor's hands are tied. I mean, it's some craziness. Here's us, the United States, all proud that we're so progressive and elevated, and we're not like those third world undeveloped countries, right? Somebody else's religious beliefs in a country where we're all here together, and we are a country of many faiths, of many different walks of life, of just many different people and cultures from everywhere. And that's our strength. That is the United States. That is what makes us who we are. Sagittarius energy I feel real kind of strong with this. I do know that with Mercury here at 11 degrees, this puts Mercury right on the United States ascendant. Mercury is the news. An ascendant in a chart is the appearance. So we're, like how we look, right? Whether it's to foreign lands, foreign countries, foreigners, emigration, like that whole considering of future and talking about being so hyper concerned about people coming into this country. I think one of the conversations we might not be having enough of is the amount of people that are like, it's time to hightail it the hell out of this country. We're going to talk a little bit more about Mercury in a minute. But know that she's a pretty quick mover. Arrow right here, these two lines. Yeah. If you look at those lines and where they're drawn, it shows us that Mercury is at 11, but it's 11 degrees of Saggy, and those blue-green I don't know why I can't say those blue-green lines. Those represent the shadow zone, meaning it does a retrograde. And the retrograde hasn't begun yet, but it will. The retrograde's coming. So I'll speak a little bit more on that in a second. By the way, there is a separate video for that. So if you haven't seen it, you would definitely want to go watch it to understand the details of it. Mercury and Venus are siblings. They talk all the time. All right. They're always checking in. And whatever Mercury is thinking about, communicating and talking about, she's talking to her sister about it. And then likewise, the same way with Venus. Well, here's she at 29 critical degrees in Saggy, justice, right? Opinions and judgments, Supreme Court, and the future. A lot of other Saggy keywords that are prevalent, adventure and confidence and usually optimistic, but it's so much about experiences and immersing myself in those experiences and other cultures and languages and lands and food. And it's, because it's philosophy on life, Sagittarius. It's the big picture. Think Jupiter, traveling to those faraway lands, getting on a plane. So her at 29, we might hear something about the values, maybe within certain airlines or the air or travel industry. That could be part of this. Money and travel and the values, other than the whole woman and women thing, because, well, this is what these two, it's going to be hot topic for them, of course. This is the last day she'll be at 29. The next day she changes signs. Venus changes and goes into smart, long-term, building my financial security, tangible financial security and stability, Capricorn. The steps I have to take to build for my long-term stability and security. Venus is values and money and desires in Capricorn. She's going to go this week from 29 degrees of Saggy to 8 degrees of Capricorn. That's where she moves this week. Venus is smart and disciplined with her money. She's thinking long term. She was thinking a whole lot about long term in the future in Sagittarius, but now she gets into Capricorn and it takes the very super, maybe hyper idealism, dreamy almost of Venus and my values in Sagittarius. Remember, that's the wine and that's the dreams. And that's the drinking possibly too with Venus and Sagittarius. So usually we have sweet tooth with a Venus going through Sagittarius. At the same time, can be overly idealistic. Very, the racehorse blinders are up. Oh, we got a phone call. Hold on a second here.
Good. The doctor is just wondering what time you think it was that.
Okay, we're back. I honestly don't remember what was the last thing I said. Had to take that call. That was for my mother. She's in a different state than me. And yeah, she just got an ambulance ride to the hospital, to the ER. So we don't know what's going on. They're running tests. She just was complaining about her left arm. Anyway, so one of my siblings just called to let me know that, well, the doctor was in to see her, which is good, which is really good. So we're kind of just in waiting mode. All right. Trying to stay focused here. So, we think of all the keywords for that, for Jupiter, when we look at Sagittarius energy. And at the time here, Jupiter's in a retrograde already, right? We look back on the chart over to Jupiter, and it's sitting here at 19 in a retrograde, right? It started retrograding at the beginning of October. But the point of that is that whatever is going on in Saggy, we kind of got to follow the energetic breadcrumbs and go back to where Jupiter actually is up in the sky and what sign it's in. And so communications and talking and thinking in the news cycle, this is also public figures, right? And well, by now, the presidential election for the U.S., we had our election at this point. Results, may be in the news right now. Mercury in Sagittarius Mercury tends to be a little bit of a trickster. And this takes me to the next bit, that retrograde that I spoke of, right? So the retrograde zone, Mercury's already in the shadow zone. So that means that there's usually a review, a rerun, a redo. There might be some states where there has to be, I forget what states have different things where, forgive me, I don't know what the hell it's called. Anyway, whether it's called a runoff or whatever that is, but they have to kind of cast their ballots again. So it looks like, based on this, maybe that's a thing. It might not be, but I wouldn't doubt it because Jupiter's in Gemini, right? But this can be like the courtroom and judges and judgments. This can be that too. We also think of peers and jury of peers. Mercury in Saggy, as well as Jupiter in Gemini, a jury of peers and in the courtroom. That's all Gemini energy, and Mercury and Sagittarius and Jupiter, because Jupiter would be the judge. Because Capricorn energy thinks Saturn. Well, Saturn would be like her dad, and Venus is like kind of like the daughter in a way, right? And so she's taking the orders and she's following the rules, and she understands there's a process and there's steps to build something that's for the long haul, and that there's no shortcuts. So Venus is usually really smart in Capricorn. So you see Mars right there. Mars is at 2 to begin this week off, and it doesn't move fast this week. It's only going 2 degrees this week. It goes from 2 degrees of Leo to 4 degrees of Leo. Strange. Usually Mars moves a little bit faster, but there's a reason. Mars is moving slower because it is getting ready to go retrograde. A planet has to slow down before the retrograde begins. Mars retrograde begins at 6 degrees of Leo. Now, there is a separate video for this, but just remember, in general, whether it's Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, planets that are in retrograde, those keywords for those planets: Mars, my body, my passions, my physical actions, the appearance of my body, my freedom, my body autonomy, my body, my choice type of thing. Weapons, people with weapons, soldiers. That's all Mars energy. Mars is impulsive, gets angered very easily, doesn't have much patience. We also think ego. It's all about me, myself, and I, right? Mars tends to not use the mind. It tends to leap without looking. It tends to speak before thinking. Sometimes I don't know if Mars even thinks, but super reactionary energy usually, but very physical when you have Mars in Leo, because Mars is very physical, very athletic. When it's in Leo, it's even more physical and athletic, right? The retrograde means it becomes more pronounced. All those keywords for Mars I just mentioned become stronger and more pronounced. Because it only goes between 2 and 4 degrees, this is kind of an alert week for those of you who have objects in the fixed signs of Taurus and Scorpio and Aquarius, technically, because it's creating an opposition to Aquarius energy. If you've got stuff in Aquarius between 2 and 4 degrees. So technically we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees of the fixed signs. All right. So stress and tension to Scorpio in the early degrees. And look, we have a lot hanging out here in Scorpio in the early degrees. So to me, because Scorpio is Mars and Pluto ruled, to me, it says the first few degrees of Scorpio between 1 and 6 degrees, or well, for this week, the 1 and 4, 5 degrees. It's really that Leo energy is going to be really stressed because there's so much over here. And you see Black Moon Lilith sitting there, red, which means retrograde. She's going backwards. So the first, between 0 and 8 degrees of Scorpio is stressing Leo energy, right? It's an opposition to Taurus, right? Right. So we look over there, the other fixed sign, Taurus energy, Those early degrees, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are kind of stressed out because Mars can throw stress and tension. It's fixed energy, squaring. Usually, when you have a lot of fixed energy, you get that big T square. It's uncomfortable. Normally, we have to take action with a T square, right? And usually, the way out of a T square, as far as the stress, is to go to the exact opposite of the point of stress, which would be Mars, because Mars is an instigator. Some say it's like a shit starter because it's so impatient and impulsive and it doesn't think and it just wants to act and it's feisty. It's usually ready to go to battle. That's Mars. So the opposite of that Mars energy is going to be the Aquarius, like at the 0 degrees, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what that does is it creates a grand cross in the chart. And it sounds horrible, but it actually creates balance because a T square by itself, boy, this irritation and this agitation with the fixed signs is usually difficult. Okay. It just means stress and tension. And we usually have to take action. We're forced to take some sort of an action. Like we can't handle the stress and the tension. We feel like I have to do something, especially impatient, feisty Mars. I have to do something. And so, usually, one of the best recommendations for Mars energy, because we're so angered, we don't know what to do with it. Like we're going to burst. For me, it used to always be go to the woods, go hiking, do something very physical to like find a healthy way to let that intense, feisty, fiery, active energy out. But if you can't do that, right, you can find a creative outlet, right? Lots of people have different ways to be creative. Some cook, some sew, some get paint or draw or crochet, like or maybe just doing around the house creative things. Sometimes working and cleaning the house can absolutely help. I knew a couple of people like when there was stress going on, they just immediately start cleaning. They just start like because they have to do something. The jittery and the anxiousness inside of them just needs an avenue, a healthy outlet. Because if we don't do that, Mars likes to start shit. So it might start picking fights even. And you don't want to be picking fights with the Scorpio energy, especially since it's very strongly supported with all these planets. This is this entire week. Okay? This is this entire week. What is Scorpio, folks? Our shared values that we're willing to fight for, but it's also the wounds. It's the deep psychology. It's the hurts. It's the energetic wounds. It's the deep emotional wounds. It's stuff that we have pain and possibly some fear from, and we don't even know where the hell it came from or what's the cause of it. Usually, when you have something that kind of grips you like right in the chest and it's intense and it's like, where the hell? Have you ever had that? You feel something and you're like, where the hell is that coming from? And it got triggered by a current event or conversation, but it's the intensity of it that you're like, holy shit, this can't be. I don't feel this over this event. There's something else here. And to be sure, there is something else there. Scorpio, it's Pluto ruled. So it's that history, it's the past, it's the soul memory. There's some cumulative stuff there, residual, like a carryover energy from other events, another time, possibly even. Okay. So it can make it kind of difficult to deal with. Estrella's the pit bull. Humea's there to make change. She's there to restore a breakdown, whether it's mental and emotional breakdown. She's usually there to restore. It has to do with shared values. Scorpio, literally our shared assets, right? Sometimes we think death and taxes and inheritances with Scorpio energy. And then we have Juno, partnerships. Look at this. Shared assets, partnerships. It's the money degree, 2 degrees. We think bank, we think insurance companies for sure with this because the number 2 is showing up twice here. And then Black Moon Lilith, that part of our personality that we might not even want to own. We might want to be like, oh, I'd never said that. I would never think that. I didn't do that. It's something that we might find shameful. It's emotional because it's Black Moon Lilith. So we think of the public, we think of women, we think of wounds of the past, warriors, veterans, Scorpio energy, people who once fought, some strong energy here. But this can also be the wounds of the body and the surgery or lack of, because Mars is part of this too. And women, that makes us think abortion and those women's reproductive rights and health care. Women are dying from because they don't have access to the health care that they need. Black moon's going backwards. And she's going to be this week, I believe she goes backwards to 22 degrees in Libra. Yeah, so she enters back into Scorpio. I'm sorry, she goes to 0 degrees Scorpio Wednesday, I believe it is, this week. And then by Monday, she is at 22 in Libra. And for a heads up, she goes to 11 degrees in Libra and then goes direct. So she's in relationships for a while. The justice system, courtrooms, lawyers, equality. Black Moon is not done with this. There is still a lot of inequality and a lot of work that she's doing here to make things right, somehow to make things right. So for this week, Mercury starting at 11 ends up at 19. Okay, starts at 11, ends up at 19 for this week. All right, the sun, same thing, starts at 19, ends up at 26, stays in Scorpio. So this is very intense and powerful energy, a lot of soul power here, literally. Scorpio is about the past, but the deep psychology. We may be looking back upon our wounds of the past and trying to figure out what is it that is the source of our hurts and of our vulnerabilities. Lots of folks seeking ways to heal themselves, whether it's getting professional help, groups, therapy, what everyone has a different method. And whatever that is, as long as it's a healthy method for you, I would recommend it. Because anytime we're in a Scorpio energy, Scorpio's digging below the surface. It's like the super detective all by itself. Well, Mercury had just been through here, and now the sun is here. So it highlights something. It highlights bonds, emotional bonds, and it highlights shared values. Here's the connection between Mars and Mercury. All right. Mercury shadow zone in fire, right? Some of that shadow zone area for Mercury, even though it's not at the low degrees, it's from 6 to 22 in fire. And Mars, the number 6, is relevant here. So 6 in Leo and 6 in Mercury. Like that's going to be important, those 6 degrees. That number is important. I think the service industry comes up. Think of all Virgo energy. Think of the minutia in Virgo. We also have to consider 6 degrees in Leo energy, fun and playing games, having a good time, taking risks, but taking risk with those who have served. Served in what capacity? We always talk about healthcare, right? We always talk about healthcare, but what about on a large scale? How do you serve on a large scale? Well, you can be, like a representative in your state, because these people who work in the government who are supposed to represent us, sure, that's their job. They are literally supposed to serve. But we think of police officers to protect and serve, right? But what about soldiers? What about soldiers, right? People who have served. 6 degrees service to the country, right? When we think on a big scale, service to the country, that may be a bigger part of the story. Service members and people who present day service, there can be certain legislation that's being held up or that was held up. There might be something in the news about service and service members, whether they're current, past, present, in the news, Mercury. All right. And people, you know, um, weapons, Mars energy, Mercury energy, information, how I share information, the minutia, the day to day, the mundane. And not many people consider service members as like super flashy, like, okay, somebody served. There was a time in this country when people who served their country, especially when we think of all the people who who were performers, right? There was a lot of performers, whether they were with music and acting, a lot of, a lot of people who truly served because they wanted to serve their country. So this is kind of like spotlight energy. And because we have these planets doing retrogrades, I think that connection is important. And the public is big because Cancer energy and Mars going back into it, we think mental health, mental well being. We think of the emotions of the public being inflamed for lots of different reasons. And many times it's because of public figures. Public figures. Some are politicians, some aren't. But public figures, maybe there are things that need to be said and heard. It's possible. But there comes a point where you have to be you have to really think twice about those that are intentionally saying things to either hurt others or to mislead, to manipulate, to talk bad about, to kick down on, whether it's for clicks, whatever the hell it is, whatever the hell it is. Ethics, morality, values, and character really, really matter. To me, the Virgo qualities, the stuff that's not real fancy, to me, that shit means more than a lot of this other, how many thumbs I have and follows. To me, I would much rather have a good quality human being on my team, on my side, part of my group, than any fake, phony, flashy, thumb chasing, whatever the hell. So Venus being in Capricorn for this week and the following week, and then the following week, right? Venus being in Capricorn, she's smart. She's smart and she's focused on her long-term values. Okay. So the connection with women and Venus, and what are the next steps that we have to take to get what we need and to build a better healthcare system and looking out for those who are in need. I think that's the big picture of this week. I think we got to be smart, be Venus, be grounded, be stable, understand that the rule of law and the justice system matters, and that our values and character and quality truly, truly matter. So, with that, I think this is a wrap. We're all set. You got any questions? Comment below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye. Whatever we're hearing about, we might not have all the bits of information that we need.